Whenever I've asked investors what compels them to put big bucks behind an entrepreneur, they inevitably say, beyond skills, knowledge, capabilities, or experience, the one thing they look for is the ability for someone to walk through walls. That's a term they actually use, walk through walls. Because the road to doing something new is paved with many hurdles. There are setbacks, there are disappointments, there are sacrifices. And the only way you can plow through all of those to reach your lucky break is if you're compelled by a powerful why. Why are you guys here? Why are you doing what you're doing? In fact, Mark Twain says there are only 2 days that really matter in someone's life. The first is, what do you think? The day you're born, and the second is the day you figure out why. Why are you here? Not many of us get that gift of a day of figuring out why you're here. Some of us are born knowing you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, but some of us have to figure out through a traumatic event. So I'm going to tell you about the gift of my second day. My second day starts out in the mid-90s. I'm in my mid-20s. I've essentially given away my age. Please don't tell anyone. I'm in Beijing. I've been there for almost 2 years. I'm there with a global telecoms company. You might know it, called Nortel Networks. I know, it hurts me too. So I was recruited into Nortel on a global leadership development program where you're rotating different roles in different business units and different geographies around the world with the express intent to one day be a president. So I started with them, I'm Canadian, in Calgary. I went to Toronto, I went to Raleigh, North Carolina, I went to London, England, and there I found myself in Beijing. And I thought I had the world by the tail. Had everything I wanted. A career trajectory, I was seeing the world, and I was making a lot of money. And that mattered to me at the time because, you see, I started my life in a very humble place. I was born into a 1,000-square-foot home with my 5 brothers and 3 sisters and my 2 parents. And this home was at the end of a little dirt road in northern Saskatchewan. You know where that is. And that house had no running water and no plumbing and no electricity. So as you might imagine, particularly in the winters where it could get down to minus 50 degrees Celsius, life could be very challenging. So from the time I was a little girl, I was bound and determined I was going to change my story. I wasn't going to be poor anymore. So there was, I thought I had made it, and I worked really hard to get there. Until one day, I was walking through the woods in Beijing, and I was literally bit by a bug. Within 24 hours, I landed in the International Health Clinic, and I'll never forget the moment when the doctor came in and said, "I'm so sorry, but there's nothing more we can do for you." And that beginning, a 2-month journey where every night I would go to sleep at night not knowing if I was going to wake up the next day. And there's something about that conversation that happens in your head in the deep dark of night that changes a person. And it certainly changed me. I knew that if I got the chance to stay here, that I couldn't be here just to change my story. I had to change many people's stories. And it was not lost on me that that story still had to be very personal to me. So imagine, here I am, the irony, right? Here I am in Beijing, and we're trying to figure out how to order sodas from the vending machines with our cell phones. That's what we're trying to do. And here I am in this hospital, and you cannot take a blood test and figure out what I have? How is it possible we could be spending all this money in this press and telling us something so frivolous over here when there was a pretty basic human healthcare gap over here? And how could I have been working on this over here when now my life depended on this over here? So that's the moment when I knew that if I got the chance to stay here, I had to change that story. I had to make our healthcare system just as advanced, just as productive, just as sexy as the tech industry. And so Clearly, I made it. I'm here. Yeah. But it changed my life. I quit my job. The company thought I was crazy. I said, I'm not crazy, I am compelled. And I moved to the home of biotech. I went to San Francisco, and I thought, I'm not a scientist. I'm not going to cure cancer or HIV or hepatitis C myself, but I'm a good business person. So what if I can see a problem that no one else had seen before? What if I compare the life science industry to the tech industry? Maybe I could figure out where the problem is. And so this is what I discovered. In the tech industry, if you give a couple of guys a couple of computers and a couple $100,000, in a couple of years, they can turn around and sell that to Microsoft or Yahoo or Google for $200 million. Fast and easy like a rap song, right? In the life science industry, before you even turn the lights on, you need at least a year to raise your capital, to get your specialized infrastructure, all your capital equipment, your operations team, your permits and licenses, and even then it takes you, what? 8 to 12 years to get a drug to market, and billions of dollars. So, folks from the outside looking in, who would ever start a life science company? By the time you got it to market, if you ever did, the only thing you're making is a difference, and that is not sustainable. Right? If you're an investor, which investor would you rather be? The guy who puts $500,000 into Instagram and sells it for $1 billion 2 years later, or the poor schmucks who put hundreds of millions of dollars into an oncology play that has every chance of still failing in phase 2, phase 3, years down the line, right? So this is the problem we needed to solve. We needed to make it just as cheap and fast and easy to start a life science company as to start a tech company. And we needed to make it just as good a return on investment for investors to get into this industry as in the tech industry. So, how do you solve the problem? I went back again to what I knew. I was with this big company, and I could go into all of these locations and within a year get a product or a project up and running, and I could do that because every place I went to was a standardized place where it had equipment. I had an operations team. I had a business services team, and all I had to do was focus on my product. So I thought, well, what if I create a big company environment for early stage companies in life sciences? Can we make it faster and cheaper and easier for them to focus on their science so they can get solutions to patients? So that's what I did. I made a proposition. I was lucky that somebody gave me a break, and they gave me $6 million. And I created my very first facility, 40,000 square feet. Half the space was dedicated to common research space filled with capital equipment for the companies. The other half of the space had individual wet lab and dry lab and office modules, so you could literally get a 6-foot bench and start a company out of university and put it on your credit card like a gym membership. And then you had access to an operations team that took care of the day-to-day activities for you so you could focus on the science. And I hired a business services team so they could help build capabilities where people would learn about the business or the science aspects of taking a company to market and where you can meet investors. And you know what? We did really well. In our first 5 years, our company's raised nearly $2 billion worth of capital. More importantly than that to me, is that our company said they could do in 8 months what had taken them 4 years to do before. So, were we successful? So far, so good. Had we solved the problem in the industry? Not even close. Because if you do that, you have to scale. So I decided I was going to expand. I was going to go down to San Diego. And then I had another lucky break. I met an incredible team within Johnson & Johnson, a team that was as passionate about the pursuit of patient solutions as we were. And we realized that if we put our respective assets and strengths together, that we could do something no one else had done before, that really we could change the industry. And so we created Model 2.0 of what we had done before in San Diego, and we called it JLABS. And from there, we realized that this thing could really work, and we've expanded to over 8 locations, including 1 in Toronto. And we're so excited about the opportunity that Canada brings to us to solve problems for patients. And JLABS has done everything we wanted it to do, making it faster and easier and cheaper and helping companies design better companies and making a better return on investment for investors. Now, for investors, instead of putting $10 million into one company that had a 10% chance of making it, Now investors could put $1 million into 10 different companies, and one of them was going to hit, right? And for us, at J&J, it made an incredible difference. It allowed us to get to know these startups better because it attracted the best companies without putting any strings attached on these companies, giving them an opportunity to create value on their own. They came, and we got to work together. We got to know each other better, and then we figured out what were the right deal terms for them and for us. It has to be a win-win. And we were able to do this because we figured out a very cost-effective way of getting the corporation to say this makes sense, because the companies would pay for their play while they were there. So how could the companies say no? And along the way, then we've done a ton of deals that are really exciting, but the only way we could do that is if we made our own next lucky break, which is we established deal teams. Deal teams around the world in 4 locations that had science experts that could look at the science of what these companies were doing and say, yeah, that has potential. Let's put some deal terms around that. That could be traditional equity investment, licensing, but could be very non-traditional. It could be, listen, you're doing something revolutionary, and you're really excited about it, we're really excited about it, nobody really knows for sure, so let's just do a proof of concept contract. No strings attached, let's learn together. And so with this model, we have created the opportunity for startups to do amazing things. So let me give you a story of 2 guys in a company called Arcturus. And these 2 guys had wanted to start a company to make a difference for patients for 15 years. But never thought that they could do it, because who were they? They were just 2 ordinary Joes. In fact, the CEO's name is Joe. I kid you not. So these 2 guys were, always dreaming of this possibility. And then JLABS came to town. We started doing all these educational programs. So they came. They were there at the front of the class every day. And they learned. And suddenly they had the confidence that they could do it too. So they quit their jobs. There was $40,000 between the 2 of them, and they applied for JLABS. Now, they were working in rare diseases, which was not a strategic area of interest for us. But these 2 guys, they had that power of why. They were going to plow through those walls until they reached their lucky break. So we invited them in, and we said, listen, you only have so much time, so much money. If you want to make your platform work, you have to hit these 3 data points. And tell you what, we'll set you up with some coaching to help you progress your science from our Biotech Center of Excellence. And if you reach these data points, we'll validate it for you. No money, no strings attached, but you can take that validation to a VC, and you can raise money, which is what they did. They got $13 million. They kept working in the labs, and then one day, I gave them a lucky break. I had a talk I was going to do to our heads of R&D, and I said, guys, you come up with me, you tell them about your story and what you're doing. And they did. And our heads of R&D said, oh my God, this is the missing technology platform we've been looking for hepatitis B, one of the 10 most deadliest, debilitating diseases in the world that everybody's been having a hard time figuring out how to make it work because there are so many variants to it. You can't find a platform that can hit all the variants. Well, these guys, they had it. So we ended up doing a multiple $100 million deal with them. Well, these guys came to us and said, listen, hepatitis B, we're so passionate about it, but we came on this journey to solve rare diseases, and we really want to do that. So we said, listen, we'll tell you which rare disease your platform will work for, and we'll coach you along the way to get that deal you're looking for. So 6 months later, they ended up doing a $1.6 billion deal for rare diseases. So these guys went from $40,000 between the 2 of them in quitting their jobs to over $2 billion worth of deals in 2.5 years. 2.5 years. That's tech time and life sciences. And that was what I was hoping to do. So, along the way, in 15 minutes and in 15 slides, this journey looks pretty easy, right? I look pretty successful, right? I can tell you that there were many hurdles along the way. There were many disappointments and setbacks and sacrifices. I guarantee you there was whiskey and tears many times. There were many times I was down on my knees and I thought, this is it. This is a sign that I'm supposed to quit. I'm not meant to do this. And then I thought about that night when I was in my hospital bed, not knowing whether I was going to make it or not. And I was hoping and I was praying that somebody was out there fighting for me. And that's when I would get back up and I'd dust myself off and I'd go back and I'd fight. And I would plow through those walls until I reached my lucky break. And so I say to all of you, many of you who consider yourselves ordinary Joes, I promise you, you find your passion that gets you addicted to getting out of bed in the morning, that gets you addicted to plowing through those walls, and I promise you, you will find your lucky break. So, with that, I wish you the best of luck.